So this is an incredibly basic, simple little jig, simple 1/4 inch router, screwed onto a piece of plywood with it, which acts as the base and the fence. With a base, there's a piece of 6mm MDF just to raise it up enough, and really with a gap at the back, and you just run whatever you're trimming against the base and the fence, and there's a bearing guided bit in here, and it just trims it flush. Simple as that. Run it through both ways, and we're done. I use it to trim the edges of this, but I still need a quick sand just to clean it up, but it does a very close trim, a remarkably good flush cut. I must make a better version with a longer lead in, because it's just a little bit small, but it works really well. So we're all set up here on the miter saw to do a trenching cut. Trenching cut just gives us that nice clean sort of shoulder to the edge of the cutaway like this, so that when the foot goes on, it gives us that nice clean clear edge. So that's what we do, just really shallow. It's only a couple of mil, and we'll get on with it. In fact, I should check that we are doing a trenching cut. Let me just, yeah. Yep, that's the one. And as usual with these things, we've got the fence packed down so that the centre of the blade moves beyond the edge of the workpiece, so we get a consistent line all the way through. I've made a little taper jig for the bandsaw to cut the legs down to take the feet, and I'm working my way through each leg one side at a time. Nice fit. So here we are, we've got all our bits and pieces laid out to make the ends of the tables, the sort of ladder ends. One of the funny things about this is that because we've got these dominoes lining up sort of around the leg, I've had to cut the side dominoes down, the ladder cross pieces that we're going to put in, because obviously you don't want them going through and interfering with the big dominoes, but of course just because you cut them down doesn't mean they won't go in too deep. So what we've got to do is just pop regular sized dominoes in to the leg to make sure that the short ones don't go too far through while you're doing the glue up. So these are just going to go in dry, and yes, please ignore these secondary holes. They were what we call a mistake. So with those in, then we can get the cut down dominoes glued in and get the ends on and get it clamped up. With everything already measured and cut to size, it's a simple enough matter to fit the end rails first to one leg and then the other. Lump hammer's a handy thing to have around though, and with everything persuaded to fit nicely, I can get it in clamps with a little square in one corner just to be safe. Where the ladder ends dry, I'm cutting out the corner notches for the shelf skins on the bandsaw. Because of the way the legs are made, the notches are rectangular, not square, so I'm making the first cuts with a piece of 6mm scrap against the fence to pack it out, and bearing against a stop for depth. And then, making the second cut, I can move the 6mm scrap onto the depth stop and bear against the fence directly for width. Notice how I'm using a fat pencil with an eraser on the end to move the waste out of the way. We don't want to get our fingers in there, and it saves having to stop the bandsaw every time. So this is all a bit of a what's name. I've come to the conclusion that the only way to get these things to fit properly, because obviously these have to fit really snugly, is to actually glue the shelf skins on in position. And in order to do that, I've had to dry assemble one table. I'm going to glue the bottom skin in on each one and just clamp it out with spring clamps. Then I can disassemble it, fill the middle with solid to dampen it down a little bit, and put the top skin on, because obviously I'll have the cutouts and things in the right place, and then I'll be able to glue the whole thing up, I think, and still get these nice clean joint lines, because the idea of getting these absolutely perfect and flush without having it pre-assembled is pretty difficult. These have to come in, because this is a finished edge, these have to come in pretty tidily, so basically that's what I've decided I've got to do, and that's what I'm going to do. I've got a squeezer glue down each side, 5 little spring clamps on each one, and yeah, we'll get on with it. And get on with it I do, although I did have to order in some more spring clamps. And with the clamps off and the shelf sections removed, I can apply the trimming jig once again to trim the edges flush. And then we can start completing the shelves. I've made this little jig to locate the 4 corner cutouts and keep the shelf in place, while I glue in some 22mm scrap with PU adhesive. This is just to give the shelves a bit of heft and to stop them sounding too hollow. And then adding the top skin to the shelf, pressing it down firmly against the PVA around the rails. Then clamping it up carefully so the top skin doesn't shift. I started putting a couple of 21 gauge pins in after this. And then rinse and repeat until all 6 shelves are completed.